Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? In news stories like this, it's always important to kind of write off with a disclaimer in that there can be troubling aspects and elements within any community, whether it be a religious community, a sports community, a fandom community, or any town or city that you know of. In it, you're going to have a variety of people with a variety of different motives. And sometimes those motives can be selfish to the point where it could possibly harm others. So always be aware that, furry is, while we try the best to, while we try our best to, keep, every individual furry will try to keep, company on those that make them feel comfortable and try to remove elements that are or try to keep distance from elements that could possibly do harm. It's a struggle, and it's something that is a it's always an element of having to keep trying, right? We have to keep trying, um, and it's a factor of maintenance, and it always will be. So some people go to communities thinking that they'll be safe or it'll be safe from those elements, but I start off this by saying that, and when I usually talk about stories like this, that's what I would start with. So right now we're going to be talking about a community in the northwest of the United States, a furry community, a furry community based around a brewery. And interestingly, there was a coverage of this sort of brewery in Flora because the local press had covered the opening of a brewery called Slightly Furry. And there was another brewery that was nearby when I was reading through the article. So, we get our I didn't post the article. I didn't, initiate the article, but, as an editor, when a person submits an article to Flera, I'm allowed to read it and sort of like add little bits in there. And so I noted that it was the second like furry tap room to open. There was actually a second in Seattle, which was kind of crazy. It's like, oh man, it's like this article is talking about this new brewery, and lo and behold, there's another one. It's like, wow. It's like I don't know many towns with one furry brewery. This one has two. So that was interesting, but keep that in the back of your head as we talk about this news coverage that has come out of that particular territory. Um, so we're gonna do the inverted pyramid thing here. We're going to, now that the disclaimer's over, it's important in written form when you're doing nonfiction to put the important information first. I know in YouTube I don't do that because it's talking, right? But it's important in writing that you get to the point right away. And if you want to add more details, you put it in the bottom. Kraus Affliction taught me this when I was doing a nonfiction panel. He actually was sitting next to me and he brought that up. It's like, yeah, there's something called the inverted pyramid. And I'm like, I didn't know about that. I should probably implement it into my style. If you go back to my style like a long time ago, I'm very rambly, sort of like how these videos start to come across. But it's important to get to the point. And so we're going to be covering sort of a PR letter from Slightly Furry in their blog post. And I'll read it out full. Just so like we can, and I'll try not to speak interlude into it, but we'll analyze it a little bit afterwards. It was written on September 25th. It says, "Breaking our silence. Hey, folks, we want to acknowledge the concerns raised within our community and have taken time to reflect, consult experts, and make decisions with the well-being of our members in mind, and apologize for not responding sooner. While our personal relationships and feelings are deeply valid, we are committed to handling the situations objectively, ensuring that all decisions serve the best interest of our entire community. Slightly Furry has always been and continues to be a space where harmful behaviors such as zoophilia, zoosadism, and any form of harm or exploitation have no place. We remain committed to maintaining spaces where all of our members and communities feel safe and respected. Our mission is to ensure the Slightly Furry community is inclusive, safe, and welcome to all. We are dedicated to continually improving our policies, practices to maintain this commitment. In situations where potential harm is raised, we will act swiftly and decisively, ensuring that the space remains a positive environment for all. We heard your feedback about our code of conduct and are working to simplify the wording and make it more accessible to all. Slightly Furry moderates all spaces with community safety as our top priority. If any reports of harmful or dangerous behaviors are brought to our attention, we will take swift action, including removal from our virtual and in-person spaces if necessary. We understand that rebuilding trust takes time, and we are committed to ongoing reflection and improvement to ensure our spaces remain inclusive, safe, and supportive. We welcome feedback and are open to continue conversations on how we can do better. So since we're open to conversations, so a lot of people will be like, what? Like, you read that and you go, okay, like it's sort of a generic letter, but an interesting thing about how this letter is written as is it's like there were concerns raised within our community. And it's like, well, what concern? Right? Like every community has concerns. Like if you get a group of 1,000 people together, there's always going to be some concerns, right? And you always like want to put like a code of conduct into it. Like most conventions have a code of conduct before you even arrive at the door and say like, this is what we kind of expect of our attendees to behave. Like, and that's what a code of conduct is for. And, Slightly Furry indicates in their letter, they already have a code of conduct, right? So the question to somebody who just gets thrown this blog post out of nowhere, it's like, well, what's the big concern? Because you're putting it on your news, right? You're putting it on your front page. So, but the interesting thing about it is like it kind of, the interesting thing about how this is written is like, there is a reason why this was written, and we're going to go over that. But because it was emptied out and hollowed out, quite literally, as we're going to find, the issue is that this thing basically goes and continues to be where harmful behaviors such as zoophilia or any other form of harm or exploitation have no place. So clearly they have to talk against zoophilia and zoosadism. Now, without any catalyst, right, a furry organization saying, like, without prompt, zoosadism has no place here. I mean, obviously furries can understand, but why? Like, it just doesn't seem like it just sort of unfortunately ties those elements with furries without any prompt, right? It's like, and obviously that is a stereotype that occurs and is as a thing. But obviously there is, like, the problem with stereotypes is that, yeah, there are cases where there are individuals who do those sorts of things, and yes, some of them fall within the furry fandom, some of them don't. Thefts can be committed by a white man or a black man, but there's obviously a stereotype that's harmful that goes to the thing. And unfortunately, when there's no catalyzing event saying this is why we're writing about this, is like, why is a furry organization saying that has no place here without a catalyzing event, right? Is there actually a problem within the entirety of the furry fandom, right? It stretches the issue to the entirety of the furry fandom instead of the target that catalyzed the letter in the first place. And Dogpatch released an article where he saw the initial release of that letter. Because as you'll see, and it's also, I said that I talked about burying the lead earlier, right? Like, we're talking here, there's like, we wanted to acknowledge concerns within the community, and it isn't really until the second paragraph where they get to like what they want to address, instead of saying, we want to address this thing first. They kind of go a little long, and they do have some repetitive words here. So just as sort of a thing. accessible to all, environment for all, um, like welcome to all, for all, environment for all, accessible for all. Like they repeat that several times, and there's a lot of redundancy that could be sort of parsed out, and that sort of, when you repeat yourself a little bit, it does feel defensive instead of like accountability. It's like, I will not do this anymore, or our community will do this. Like, it's got to be short, it's got to be pointed. Like, if it's reflective, I've had to write some of those myself. I did a whole video on that back in February of 2021. I had to like write a thing where I messed up, and I had to say, this is what I'm planning on doing in the future. This is what the actions I'm taking against myself here in order to, take a step back and do better, and like not get emotional about it. So like, it's got to be pointed, it's got to be direct, and it's got to have cause of action, right? You can't just say, well, we're going to continue what we're trying to do, and maybe, and all that stuff. That criticism aside, this is the original article, or the original one. And this is it's basically the one highlighted in red there is the missing chunk. Since July 1st, K0mpy has not been involved with Slightly Furry in any capacity, and there are no plans for future involvement. We are filing updates with the state of Washington to reflect the changes in ownership, which takes time to process and reflect the public record. Now, I buried the lead here, and I did it on purpose, because that's sort of what Slightly Furry's thing did. They had the lead in there, but then later on they removed it. And probably, I don't know if it was because of legal things and concerns about, K0mpy and who is the owner of Slightly Furry. And apparently, since July 1st, they've been trying to, they've been allegedly moving ownership, and allegedly K0mpy's not future being involved with the community anymore. And obviously, I say allegedly because obviously there are people who are skeptical. And for those, when I said put a pin on it, if you are part of that local community and there is a business that's being led by somebody who's problematic, the best thing is to not serve them or deal business with them if you feel that there is concern there. And if you feel that they aren't actually not taking steps of moving ownership to somebody who is less problematic, right? It was called the Vulpine Tap Room. Was I think the name of the other one. It's like around the lake. Like, there was like the Slightly Furries is like in a major location near two like freeways, and the Vulpine Tap Room was a bit to the north, like on the other side of the lake. So there's a bit of a distance between the two. It's not like they can serve like two different communities, but they're not that far. It's like in the grand scheme of things, they're not that far away, where if that sort of thing is a concern, that luckily you have a competitor that you can go to, unless there's a community overlap, which furry being as niche as it is a possibility. So, what's this K0mpy thing and all that? So I'm going to have links in the description below, as always, if you want to read about those things. And like, if you want to get informed, I'll always put the thing. So just as you always know, for people who watch these videos, thank you very much. There will always be a thing in the description below if you want the long or the short of it. Oral communication, as nice as it can be for the speaker, and as convenient as it is for the speaker, for the listener, and for the person trying to consume information, not always the best means of consuming that information. So always, if you like consuming via reading, there will be reading and links in the description below for you to get an assessment on that. So I think Conwatch was the first one to bring it up, and then another person posted basically a blog post, and this was like a local furry who was talking about the issue with the individual in charge of Slightly Furry, and this blog post was eventually taken down. I don't know why they was taken down, if Nala felt threatened here. Because like obviously when you bring stuff like this to light, or talk about that kind of stuff, people usually like it usually puts a target on you. So I'm always grateful for those who like stick it out and do investigate those things. I'm always just the one picking up the pieces from what they get together. They're the primary source, right? I'm merely a secondary source, and I've always understood that, and that's sort of a thing to understand. Um, without the people like Nala here, that wouldn't be like this kind of story wouldn't be possible. And there's also Dog Patch and Patch, who actually talks to these folks, and makes articles about this kind of items. Um, and so this is an article where he talks about the situation regarding Nick Compy, and basically like talks about how Slightly Furry showed up and like the donations that were provided to them, um, and basically he kind of talks about how there was a ring. It's not necessarily tied to Compy themselves, but there was a ring that was busted in that particular territory back in 2018. I believe if you've heard of Snake Thing Simons, that was a person who was within that ring. Um, and so basically, like the issue is that the Nick Compy basically he not only runs like Slightly Furry, he runs a kink community, which is like that's not anything that's negative or anything, but obviously there was issues of his history that seemed to point out that he had tendencies towards exploitative, intimate things with actual animals, right? And so, like, I'm not going to go into the details. There's a link in the description. He goes into good detail about the concerns about the individual, including like the receipts, and things like that, and the deets on that. So it is important to understand that you know that you do when you enter a community, to be safe and to watch out for one another. Um, Now this person is allegedly removed from that position, maybe, but maybe not, because obviously they edited the blog post. So um, just be aware that I think in the follow up, basically, the Slightly Furry brewery actually like got an award for something, and then like people were contacting them about the sort of the problematic ideology of their owner, as far as it goes to the titillization of animals, right? And the concerns around that. So hopefully the people in the community continue to hopefully if Slightly Furry is moving in a positive direction, they are doing so. But obviously many furries are wary, and even Nala was interviewed by Dog Patch in his second article that was more recent, and Nala is obviously very sketchy or very not trusting on it, because a lot of the people who were whistleblowing were basically banned for whistleblowing have not been reinstated, even though they basically said, oh, we're cleaning house, right? So are you really cleaning house? If you were cleaning house, then why aren't you like allowing the people who blew the cover on the story back in? And obviously it sows distrust, and it feels like exploitative in that situation, right? And if you're going to exploit folks on the internet just for small trifles like that, then obviously there is a sort of power dynamic that leads to the exploitation of those who are wordless, right? So it's always an important thing, and I thank Nala for their article. I don't know the pronouns that the individual goes by, and I thankful for Dog Patch for covering problematic issues and the things like he I think he's trying to improve a little bit. I think in his early day, he got a little too deep into the weeds and might have made accusations towards some folk that like it wasn't warranted towards. But obviously, if obviously there's community concerns and things like that, it's important that people are allowed to discuss them, irregardless of the feelings of that, because it's important that communities know who's running their communities, right? If you're going to a brewery and you don't want any weird like shenanigans or concern about supporting a person who may be doing harm to animals, then obviously that is a very big concern for furries. Furries support animal charities and support a platonic and friendship relationship with our animal companions, and I believe that that's like for I think most furries have like look upon the people who exploit them, whether it's physically or scientifically or like violently or sexually. Like the exploitation of animals is very, very frowned upon about, and like there's very much furries who are very passionate about making sure that animals are safe. Like we want a safe community for ourselves as humans, but we also need to look out for the creatures that are less powerful than us as well. Anyways, that's enough of this Rue rambling. As I said, notes in the description there about the situation there, and thanks for Dog Patch for covering that. As I said, Flera did have articles on that, and we didn't make our own article about it, but in that original article with the tap rooms, I did include a follow-up comment highlighting Dog Patch's work, and indicating that, like, if you're seeing this article and you're interested in Slightly Furry, be wary. And also there's another tap room in the article if you really want to try and if I just want to have a drink, man, and not worry about like what's happening with the leader and if they're exploiting animals or not. So anyways, thank you very much for watching. Kick the like, kick the subscribe button. Thank you for supporting our my efforts here, and please support all nonfiction writers in the fandom and their efforts, especially for those who, put themselves on the front lines. Because I'm just the person in the back room, like reading about what they've done, and they're the ones, putting their neck out and living in the local communities and going out and talking to those folks. So I'm always grateful for that. And thank you very much. Have a good one, guys. See you later.